Morning, morning everyone. Hope you're well. Looks as if we've got a few people with us, which is good. If you just want to pop a message in the chat box just to make sure that everything's working okay, and then we will get going. What do you want to? Hopefully that's all good. Hey, there we go. Morning Caroline, morning Rahul, good to see you there. And then the next one was from me. Cool, okay, right, let's go. So I'm going to try to finish off the muscles of the hand today, and then make a start on the neuroanatomy of that region as well. So linking up the stuff we did in the elbow, then down into the hand. Thank you, David. Thank you very much. Yeah, I'm guessing yours was the same year then. Thank you very much. Yeah, so thank you for messages as well during the week. I didn't end up going to the Liverpool parade in the end, just because too much work on. So which was a blessing really with what had happened. I mean, obviously it only affected a small area, but it could have been horrendous. And yeah, hopefully everybody who was injured is okay. Right, let's get going. So we finished off looking at the extensors of the wrist. So extensor carpi ulnaris, I think that's where we finished. So we're going to have a look at the long muscles of the thumb, so the muscles that originate in the forearm. And then once we've done that, we'll then look at the intrinsic muscles of the hand. And especially if you've done manual therapy stuff before, you would have heard of the thenar eminence and the hypothenar eminence. So what muscles make up those bulky areas of the hand. And specifically as well the nerve supply for those areas as we get into the neuroanatomy, because when people have problems with some of the upper extremity nerves, they have wastage in the muscles of the hand, and it's something that you can see, so something to look out for as a potential problem for people. So long muscles of the thumb then, we're going to be looking at, so the thumb is called the pollux, Pollux, and it's similar to the name of the toe, which is the hallux. So pollux thumb, hallux toe, or big great toe. And so that's why these muscles are called pollicis. And so we've got a flexor pollicis longus, an extensor pollicis longus, so obviously one flexing, one extending, an extensor pollicis brevis, so brevis means short, longus is obviously long, and then abductor, so something that will abduct your thumb and is a long muscle as well. So some of these are contained within the compartments. Let's here we go. So yeah, we've got. I'll show you the compartments in a. I was just making sure it was there. I thought it was. So this is the long flexor of your thumb. So you can see where it originates here. So on the anterior surface of the radius. So again, really massive muscle for these. Relatively kind of small movements that we're able to do, but you can hopefully see how our grip is so strong. You've got massive muscle compared to the thing that it's moving. Yeah, if you had a similar kind of ratio with muscle size to something in another part of your body, then the muscle would be just massive. So yeah, these are really long, got a really big footprint on the bone, so a very but just very really strong muscles, and we've got loads of them as well, all working together to allow us to very finely move our hands, our fingers, and put them in positions to grab things and maneuver things. So it's we've got that kind of intricate network of muscles, but also very, very strong as well to help us grip. So what does it do then? It flexes the thumb. It attaches onto the distal phalanx of the thumb. And remember, the thumb's only got two. So you've got your first metacarpal and then into the two phalanges, and there's the attachment there on the thumb. So yeah, flexor pollicis longus. I don't know whether I've got a video for this one. Let me just, oh, I do. There's one that I don't. I think it's an extensor. Yeah, let me just show you this one. So this is flexor pollicis longus. So the long thumb flexor. So there's your flexor retinacular just there. And then there's the pollicis longus just there. So that was all the digitorum muscles. Let me just go back a sec there. So remember, we covered the flexor digitorum muscles a little while ago. So superficialis is there. Move those out of the way, and then you can get to the thumb muscles. That's the profundus underneath. So these are the ones that go to the fingers, and then we've got one specifically that goes to the thumb. So there's your radius, there's your ulna, and that kind of webbing in between is your interosseous membrane. So under carpal tunnel, and then there you can see the tendon as it goes up towards the thumb. So if I just pause that there, just going back a few episodes, let's go back there. Remember, we were looking at flexor digitorum superficialis, flexor digitorum profundus. So flexor digits, so flexing your fingers, flexor pollicis, flexing your thumb. Okay, so again, hopefully keep on saying them, and then the names will become a little bit more kind of not as so much of a tongue twister, and demystifies them a bit as well, because they can be quite confusing. So these ones we covered a couple of weeks ago, and then you can see this one here, flexor pollicis, going all the way to the distal phalanx in the thumb. There it goes. And again, you can see the kind of wrapping of it as well. So it's not just like goes to the thumb and that's it. If I just pause that there, look at all the connective tissue that is around it. So all of the fascia, yeah, superficial fascia covering that whole area, wrapping around it. And like we've seen with the carpal tunnel, some areas are thickened where you've got a lot of activity going through, and it needs to be really strong. And it creates those pivot points, and it creates the increases the efficiency of those tendons and muscles. So I just got distracted by Triss's comment there. Yeah, there are some great hand dissections when we go to the anatomy labs, and you can literally pull on the tendons to move the fingers, and you can see where they travel through. The dissections are just amazing. So yeah, if you do come to visit us in London or Glasgow, this is the kind of thing that you'll see. Okay, so you'll be able to have a look at these and explore them. So there we go. So that's what it does. Okay, let's just go back a sec. Let's watch that again. Okay, so retinacular, there's the long thumb flexor. There's your superficialis for the digits. There's the profundus for the digits, and then that's the pollicis longus for the thumb. So again, quite deep, right next to the, well, obviously attaching onto the bone, quite a large footprint on the radius. And then as it turns into a tendon, goes underneath your carpal tunnel, and then up towards the distal phalanx, just up there. See, this is the thing, I think anatomy is fairly logical, really. When you think, right, that bit needs to move, so we need that bit to go there, and then when you pull it, it moves. It's, yeah, there we go. There's just loads of them. That's the only problem. Just got to try and remember them all. Okay, so back to the compartments then of the wrist. So obviously we're flipping sides now. So that was on the flexor side. We're now looking at the extensors of the thumb. I think this is the one I don't have a video for. Let me just have a quick check. Yeah, I don't have a video for this one, so it's just the image that we've got. So if you remember these compartments, we haven't looked at this one yet. We're going to have a look at that one in a sec. This was your compartment 2, extensor carpi radialis and brevis. Then you had this little bump here, which is Lister's tubercle. So if you have a bit of a feel on that radius, there's a, and go side to side on it, there's a little bump there on the radius, like this raised edge, and that's Lister's. And then the ulnar side of Lister's is compartment 3, which is this one here, and it's extensor pollicis longus. So EPL is in there, okay? And yeah, you can remember the order of these. In fact, I'll do it when we get to the thumb. Yeah, I won't add that in now. So extensor pollicis longus, so it extends the thumb and it's long, okay? So again, nice easy way to remember that name. And then here we are. So again, really long footprint again. Looking at the other sides now, so we're looking at the kind of back of the forearm just here, because it's going through that extensor, whereas the last one, flexor, was going underneath the carpal tunnel. Yeah, so this one is on this side, and we've got the posterior third of the ulna, so the kind of distal third of it, and interosseous membrane, so that connective tissue in between the radius and the ulna is also used not just as a kind of dividing structure, but it's used for muscle attachments as well. Okay, so it's a really, really strong structure again. The bones will break before you break the interosseous membrane. It is really, really tough stuff. Hence why things like compartment syndrome is such a problem, because if you have a bleed, usually doesn't happen in the forearm, usually in the lower limb. But if you have a bleed in the lower leg and there's the interosseous membrane's in the way, so the blood just accumulates and swells, and then it can cause all sorts of problems, and is apparently excruciating. So yeah, it's but that's why it won't. It's very unlikely to break. Okay, so the bones will go first. It attaches onto the distal phalanx of the thumb, but on the extensor side. Yeah, so the flexor one was up into here, extensor side is up into here. So you've got that movement both ways, and yeah, extends the thumb. That does exactly what it says on the tin. Okay, so unfortunately no video for that one, but you get the idea. Okay, now this one we do have. Oh, in fact, unless it's in that one. Let me just have a quick check. No, it's not. No, I didn't think it was. Okay, now this now ties up these compartments here a little bit, okay, so that you can make sense of them. So we're on extensor side again, so this part of the wrist, and the first compartment, the one nearest the thumb, this one involves 2 thumb muscles. Okay, so we've got an L and a B. Yes, remember longus and brevis. And this is what I nearly said a little while ago, but yeah, I wanted to show you this picture for it to all make sense. So obviously there's loads of tendons along here, and you're thinking, geez, which one's which, or how do I remember them? Well, if you go from here, this one's long, that one's short, so we've got longus brevis. So it's longus, brevis, longus, brevis, longus. Okay. Yay, easy. You've then just got to remember which longus and which brevis is which. So in this first compartment here, EPB and APL, that's just the thumb. And then this one was ECRL, so extensor carpi radialis longus, extensor carpi radialis brevis, extensor pollicis longus. Okay, so again, the more you do it, the more you kind of realise where things are, the easier it gets. The rest of them aren't as easy as that. They just they are what they are. But yeah, longus, brevis, longus, brevis, longus. Okay, so and that's those first three compartments, the extensor compartment of the wrist. Right, let's have a look at these then. So abductor, so this is your APL, abductor pollicis longus will abduct the thumb. Okay, so it'll take it out to the outside of the body. So if your hand's in the anatomical position with your palm facing forward, your thumb will go out, which is abduction, and that's what this muscle will do. Okay, it also helps with extension, abduction and extension. And again, look at the size of that. It's massive. Again, huge footprint on this muscle to just allow you to be able to abduct the thumb. Yeah, really, really long muscle belly and a fairly short tendon there. Attaches onto the lateral aspect of the first metacarpal, and it will abduct and extend the thumb. Okay, so we'll have a look at that in a sec. These are all lumped together in one video, so we'll have a look at those. And then extensor pollicis brevis. So we had extensor pollicis longus. Now we've got a short one, so the brevis. Smaller muscle, so obviously smaller footprint, but it doesn't go as far. Yeah, so it only attaches onto the first phalanx, so the proximal phalanx rather than the distal one. So this one will come over here through that compartment and then over that first metacarpal and then into that proximal phalanx just there. Okay, and the sole job of this one is thumb extension. Right, extending the thumb there. And let's have a look at those. There's a couple on this one. Yeah, so we've got abductor pollicis longus, extensor pollicis brevis, and what was the other one they said in the title then? Bear with me a sec. It's not allowing me to go back. Hold on. Let's do that one again. No, it's not liking that. We just have to play it. So this is your abductor pollicis longus, and then extensor pollicis longus and brevis. Oh, we did an EPL. I thought it was. I've labelled the video wrong. Yeah, I thought it was on there. So extensor pollicis brevis attachment, and then longus attachment just a little bit higher. So these are all the compartments there. Excuse me, tapping away. I've just realised what's wrong. Why it won't let me rewind things. Yeah, here we go. That's better. Right, let's start again. Let's go again. Okay, so yeah, I've labelled the video wrong. I didn't think that was right. So we've got abductor pollicis longus, the long abductor of the thumb, extensor pollicis brevis, the short extensor of the thumb, extensor pollicis longus, the long extensor of the thumb. And remember, the brevis went to the proximal phalanx of the thumb and the longus went to the distal. Okay, so let's have a look at those. Here we go. Okay, so just pause that there. So here we're looking at that, it passing through that, the retinacular has been taken off in this video, I think, so that you can see the tendon pathway. But here we're looking at abductor pollicis longus and extensor pollicis brevis. Yeah, and its relationship with all of the other muscles as well. So there's extensor digitorum gone. So again, similar to the flexors. So do you remember that the flexor pollicis was underneath the superficialis? Yeah, and you kind of move that to the side and then you can see the flexor. See, pretty similar with this one. So we've got the extensor digitorum and you take that away and then these ones are underneath that. So these are deep to those. So they attach a little bit further down the forearm than the extensor digitorum muscles. They're a little bit higher up. So abductor pollicis, we could probably work out where they are because of the what they do. So the abductor is going to have to be the most lateral because of the job it does. yeah, it doesn't make sense it being more medial, because it wouldn't be able to create that line of pull to be able to abduct the thumb. So it's and then the other two are very close to each other anyway, so because they do a very similar job. So abductor pollicis is on the outside, then you've got extensor pollicis brevis and extensor pollicis longus. Let me just pause that there. So what we've got here, abductor pollicis longus is in compartment 1. Okay, so that's what these numbers relate to. Extensor pollicis brevis, so the next one along, that's in compartment 1. And then extensor pollicis longus is in compartment 3. Okay, so that's what those numbers are relating to. Just there, just rewind that and go again. So there we go. So that's what they relate to there, if you're wondering what they are. So there's your APL, abductor pollicis longus, so the most lateral. And then we've got extensor pollicis brevis, the short one, extensor pollicis longus, the long one. There's your extensor digitorum. So thumb muscle origins all up around here. And I'm just going to pause that there. Okay, now this is an important area with thumb problems. So you might have heard of a condition called de Quervain's, and if you haven't, this is how it's spelt, like that. Okay, and there's a condition, probably somebody called de Quervain came up with it, called de Quervain's tenosynovitis. So it's an inflammation of the tendon, and it is usually these ones that are affected, extensor pollicis brevis and abductor pollicis longus, and it's these tendons on the side here, so they can become really, really tender. And if you've been doing manual therapy for a long time, then you are a prime target for de Quervain's tenosynovitis. It's usually those people who do manual jobs and use their hands a lot. And there is a test that you can do called Finkelstein's test. And when you know the anatomy and you have a look at the anatomy, it makes Finkelstein's make sense. Because of what you're trying to do to that tendon to kind of aggravate it, to see whether it is irritable. Okay, so that's these tendons up here going into the thumb. So this is your extensor retinacula, which is all the compartments. Okay, so all of the hoops. And here we go. So we've got extensor pollicis longus. Go there. So that this is remember that came a bit more medially, EPL. So it's in that third compartment coming across. Extensor pollicis brevis and abductor pollicis longus are in this first compartment here. So they're travelling fairly close to each other, coming underneath that retinacula and then towards, well, they kind of mainly the lateral side of the thumb, really. Okay. And there we go, there's a nice image there. Okay, so there's your extensor. Yeah, so that's extensor pollicis longus. Again, coming from compartment 3. And then these ones going through compartment 1, just here. Yeah, so that's going to be your abductor pollicis longus and extensor pollicis brevis. And those in there. There we go. Okay, so that's them all there. So EPL, that one there. EPB, that one there, and then APL, that one there. Okay, so they're all really, really close to each other. Well, I say they're all, these two are really, really close to each other. This one's a little bit further out because of where it's kind of travelling through. And I think, is that it? I thought that was it. No, a little bit more. There we go. And then those are your attachment points. Okay. So abductor pollicis brevis, down here, extensor pollicis brevis, and then extensor pollicis longus, just there. Just go back a sec. Just go through those again. Yeah, so there's your longus attachment, longus brevis, and then there's another longus brevis, and then that one. Yeah, that's a different insertion. I was going to say, I didn't want to confuse you then. You're coming up with a new. There we go. I don't know if that's labelled incorrect. I think that's labelled incorrectly. That should be APL insertion, just in there. So you've got your abductor pollicis longus, just in there. That one's your extensor pollicis brevis, the short one, and then that one up there is your extensor pollicis longus. Okay, so that should be APL rather than APB. APL, then you got EPB, EPL, just up there. Okay. Cool. Not too confusing, eh? There's so much going on in the hand, it's crazy. All these little attachment points. And that's all of the long muscles. So the muscles that influence the hand or the thumb, the wrist movements, the finger movements, that come from the forearm. Yeah, so all of that forearm bulk, all of those muscles in there. Over the last couple of weeks, that's what we've been focusing on. So now let's have a look at these. So these are now the intrinsic muscles of the hand. So they don't come from the forearm. They originate and they terminate in the hand. Yeah, that's it. So that's their first and final destination. Right. I'll just move everything out of the way. This is one of those where it might be a useful thing to screenshot if you're doing any kind of revision. I think I took the information from this from the Trail Guide to the Body by Andrew Beale. He's written a really good book. If you've never seen it before, well worth getting if you're studying any kind of therapy work, really. Especially if you have to palpate, locate things. It's perfect for that. So we've got hand and thumb regions. These are the regions down the left hand side. Where they start from, or where one attachment is, and then where the other attachment is, and then what they do. Okay, so the thenar eminence is that bit. Okay, so it's the bulky bit of muscle underneath your thumb. Yeah, so that kind of web of muscle just there. So it's around the thenar eminence at the base of the thumb, and the insertion of the metacarpals and proximal phalange or phalanx of the thumb. Okay, so it's from there into there. So it forms like a bit of a triangle around that area there. So that bulk there is your thenar eminence. What it does, it will flex, it will abduct, adduct, and oppose the thumb. So it's got loads of different actions because there's quite a few little muscles in there assisting the longer muscles that are coming from the forearm. Okay. This bit here, anatomical snuff box. This is along the shaft of the radius and the ulna, and it is. I don't know if I can get the right angle. It's in there. I think I showed you a little picture of it. I've got another one in a second, but it's in that space there. So where your extensor pollicis longus came in, so if you extend your thumb, you'll see some tendons pop up just on the side there, and the abductor pollicis longus, extensor pollicis brevis, and extensor pollicis longus, they form like a little divot in that part of your thumb, just in there, and that's what's called the anatomical snuff box. We've talked about it when we were looking at the scaphoid bone, okay, because the scaphoid is right underneath there. And it used to be used in the olden days where they would put snuff in there and snip it from that point. So they'd fill that, do that with their thumb, they'd fill it with snuff, and then they'd sniff from there. So that's why it's called the anatomical snuff box. Okay, we've got anatomy in our body that is ready made to inhale tobacco. Brilliant. Okay, and then we've got hypothenar eminence, which is the little finger side. So that's this chunky area of muscle here. Okay, so around where the pisiform bone is, or pisiform bone, just in there. So that's your hypothenar eminence. So thenar, hypothenar. Okay, and then palmar and dorsal. So that's your palm, and that's your dorsum. Okay, so we've got some flexor tendons and metacarpals, proximal phalanges, and then again we've got flexion, extension, abduction, adduction, adduction of the fingers and the thumb. Okay, depending again which structures are included. Right, let's have a look at the thenar region then. So the thenar eminence, it includes these muscles. So we've got opponens pellucis, which will create an opposition type movement with your thumb. Adductor pellucis, which will adduct your thumb. So I'll bring it from an abducted position in, yeah, but it's not that across movement, it's just the in bit. So from there to there rather than there to there, okay, bit different. Abductor pellucis brevis, so abducting out, and then flexor pellucis brevis, which is flexing your thumb forward, okay, and again a short one. So that's why that area there is quite chunky, yeah, because there's 4 muscles there. Okay, so we've got 4 chunky muscles all around that base of that thumb. Let's have a look at that. This one. Okay, so these are the muscles that make up the thenar eminence. And here we go. Okay, so we've got adductor, so it's going to bring the thumb in, pellucis, and it's just moves the thumb. Okay, that's all it does. And there's an image of it just there, and that's it just there. So we've got a couple of heads, and then they form like this L shape on the 3rd metacarpal. So again, you can see from the attachment point and the insertion point, if you like, or the 2 attachment points, you can see why it does what it does. There you go. So adduction. Again, it's quite a thick muscle. There's your thenar eminence just there. And then we've got another couple of muscles here. So we've got flexor pellucis and then abductor pellucis brevis. And then another one just underneath that, your opponens. So this is where they all attach. Let me just pause that there. I'll just go back a sec. There we go. Okay, so again, 3 muscles really close together. So flexor pellucis brevis. So that one's going to flex the thumb forward. Abductor, so that's going to abduct the thumb. And then there was another one just underneath, which was the opponens, which will do that movement. So it will bring your thumb towards your little finger. Okay, so that's opposition. Just play that through. And then there's your opponens just underneath. So abductor pellucis brevis, flexor pellucis brevis, and these are attaching now onto the carpal bones, and then up here onto the base of the thumb. So again, if you see where they go from and to, so from there to there, and muscles can only shorten, so it's kind of obvious what they do, yeah. So because of the it's obvious what actions they do. So even if you can't remember exactly where they go, I mean, if you're a hand physio, then you need to know it in and out. But if you don't deal with this stuff every day, I mean, God, I've probably treated maybe 2 hands, or people with hands, over the last maybe year, 2 years maybe. It's not something that often comes in, yeah, for the kind of work that I do. So even I would need to go over the anatomy of the region just to refresh myself. But I've got an idea of where they roughly go from and to, so that, and then you can be or try to be a bit more specific with the action testing. So yeah, there's your attachment points here and here, the blue and the red, and then there's your opponents just there. And again, because of the angle, you can see why it does what it does. There you go. Okay, so that's all thenar eminent stuff, or the thenar region, so just underneath the thumb. What time is it? I don't think we're going to get to the neuroanatomy today. We're going to have to wait till next week, I think. I'll try and get these muscles done. Hypothenar, so along the little finger side just here. These are the opponens digiti minimi. So the muscle that brings your thumb was the opponens pollucis. The one that brings your little finger across to meet it is your opponens digiti minimi. So your small digit bringing it opposite. Okay, again, it makes sense. The names make sense. Abductor digiti minimi. So guess what that one does? And then flexor digiti minimi brevis. So flexes the small digit and it's small, the muscle small. Okay, so these are all on that little finger side, making up that hypothenar eminence just here. All right, let's have a look at those. So this is the hypothenar eminence, so the little finger side of the palm of your hand. So this region just here. So there's your thenar eminence that we've just looking at. There's your abductor digiti minimi, and then your flexor digiti minimi. So again, I've tried to include some of the images that don't have anything else on as well, so you can kind of make them out a little bit better. There's the abductor and there's the flexor. So again, you can see the attachment points, because that attaches onto the outside just there. So that's going to abduct your little finger, and because of the attachment points just slightly further round, this one's going to flex it. Okay, so the origin and the insertion, or the attachments, will dictate what they do. And then there's your opponents. Yeah, so there's the opponents just in there. Abductor, pisiform bone, up into that, the end of the metacarpal. Good, and then there's the flexor, so you can see it's slightly further round onto the hamate. So that from there to there, that can only flex. That's the only thing it's going to be able to do. And then this one here to here, that's going to be bringing the little finger across to meet the thumb. So then them both working together. Oh yeah, on the nerve and artery go underneath that opponent's muscle as well. Just pop that back there. Yep, so there's your flexor. There's your opponents. And because the opponents is on the hook of the hamate, your ulnar nerve and artery will go through there. Okay. The arterial network for the hand is just fascinating. It's really, really cool. Okay. Palmar and dorsal region. Right, so the front and the back of the hand should have just about enough time to cover these. So we've got some intrinsic hand muscles that will help with various different movements of the fingers, and some that are quite surprising as well, I think, because if you have a look here, we've got abduction and adduction of the fingers and the thumb. So they will help, they will assist with like spreading your fingers and then bringing your fingers in. So those types of movements there, and you'd think that they come from bigger muscles, and they are assisted, some of those movements, by the muscles in the forearm, but we've got some real small intrinsic hand muscles that help with those movements too. So we've got the dorsal region and the palmar region, and they are made up of these three muscles. So the lumbricals, the palmar interossei muscles, and the dorsal interossei. Okay, so interossei just means in between the bones, which makes sense because they literally are Okay, so let's have a look at the lumbricals first. Excuse me. So these are the lumbricals in the hand. There we go. So if I just pause that there. So we're looking at the palmar aspect because we've got the flexor digitorum superficialis, flexor digitorum profundus, these tendons just on top. So you can see those going towards the fingers, okay? And then these muscles underneath, we did have a sneak peek of these a little while ago when we were looking at the profundus and superficialis. But if you move those out of the way, those are your lumbricals underneath. Okay, so these are all lumbricals. And then all the way attaching up to the kind of MCP joints, to the knuckle joints. And you can see there's a long attachment up into the extensor mechanism, and that the movement's really subtle. So lumbricals here, and can you see that long tendon there? So the lumbricals will help somewhat with extension of the finger, but also AB and adduction, so moving them backwards and forwards. So if you can do those kind of things, okay, I just about do that one. Okay, so that's your lumbricals that are helping out with those movements. And then your interossei muscles, so in between the bones, we've got palmar and dorsal ones. And here they are here. Okay, so everything else has been taken off. So these are really deep, yeah, real proper intrinsic hand muscles. So we've got front and back. Yeah, so the dorsal side we've got 4, and on the palmar side we've got 3. You can see them just there. Okay, so they literally are in between your fingers. So muscles coming from the metacarpals behind that transverse ligament, and they'll attach up around that MCP joint again. So the knuckle joint. Look at that. Just amazing network. So the tendon attaches to the proximal phalanx. There it is there. And again, because of the attachments, it will join in with the extensor mechanism, so that the connective tissue that helps to extend your fingers. And it will come all the way up to the tip of your finger. So it will be a very weak extensor. It will help out with the extensor digitorum muscles. Okay, so but very small pull, because of the angle of pull isn't great on these ones. Okay, so they're not able to generate a lot of force. Both the long tendons insert at the distal phalanx, so they go all the way to the end of your fingers. And that's it there. So the tendon passes in front of the MCP joint, and that's why it can create that extensor movement. Here we go. So we get a pull down and extension, and it's because of where they cross on the joint, they're able to bring about different movements. And then we've also got AB and adduction there and there. Fascinating, isn't it? Let me just go back on that one. There was a bit there that I just wanted to cover. So it's this bit here. Okay, so it goes in front of that joint. So in front of the MCP joint, so your knuckle joint, behind that one and behind that one. And that's why we get that movement there. Yeah, it's because of where it passes through, it's able to extend one joint and then flex the others. and that's why we get those little intricate movements from the fingers. Yeah, these interossei play a big role in that. So here's your AB and AD duction of each finger. And then we've also got this attachment here, and that's your web space. So that first dorsal will help with thumb movements as well. And there's a little hole in there, and that's important for later. So when we have a look at the arterial supply of the hand, remember we were looking, when we looked at the opponent's digiti, and there was a little gap where the ulnar artery and nerve went through, and then this little hole as well, and the artery passes through that hole too and forms a loop of an arterial supply for the palm of your hand. Okay, so those 2 points are really important for later. So the radial artery will come through there, and it was the ulnar artery on the other side. Okay, so remember those for maybe next week if we get a chance. There we go. Yeah, so this is your key pinch type movements, that first interossei. Cool. Hand's just amazing. There you go. I did have an intention to do the NeuroAnatomy. I've got it all geared up, ready to go, but yeah, no chance. Did my best. Thank you for taking part today. It's one of those where there's always a bit of a stunned silence with these ones, because we don't really look at the hand in much detail, and well, depending on what you do obviously, but as a kind of broad MSK, it's kind of skirted over. We might have heard of hyper and thenar remnants, but yeah, to look at it in that detail, I think it's just fascinating, that area. Cool. I will see you. There's no bank holiday next week. What am I going to do? I'm going to have to work on a Monday. Okay, so yeah, we're back on the Monday, 10 o'clock as usual. There's a couple of little bits to finish off with the hand, and then we're on to the neuroanatomy and the blood supply. Okay, so last couple of sessions. Have a great week. I'll see you next Monday, 10 o'clock.